Good evening. I am Joni Bennett, an Edina City Council member serving on the Quasquicentennial Committee of the Edina Historical Society. The Historical Society and the City of Edina worked together to plan today's celebration of the 125th anniversary of the vote to form the Village of Edina. We are delighted that you have joined us to honor the work of Edina's founders and their successors to build this community from farms to village to city. We invited Edina's elected representatives to join us this evening to recognize their contributions. Congress is in session and none of our delegation can be with us tonight. Senator Al Franken has sent his greetings in a brief video.
Hi, I'm Al Franken, and I want to wish Edina a happy 125th birthday. Now, as someone who grew up in St. Louis Park, I hope I'm not surprising anyone when I say Edina is sometimes the target of lighthearted teasing. It shouldn't be a surprise when these jokes even make it into big movies like The Mighty Ducks. But I think we all know that these jokes come from a place of respect and maybe a little jealousy. Because who wouldn't be jealous of your top-notch school system with a second-ranked high school in the state according to U.S. News and World Report? And Edina High School has also rightly received national recognition for its arts and sports programs. It's no wonder young families continue to flock to Edina. Under Mayor Hovland's leadership, Edina is also blazing a clean energy future for our state. In 2010, Edina became the first city in Minnesota to create a PACE program. It's a funding mechanism which provides an easy way for businesses to finance clean energy and energy efficiency projects. And that means businesses save money on electricity bills, they cut their carbon emissions, and create jobs all at the same time. This is the kind of thing we need more of, and it's a high priority for me as chairman of the Energy Subcommittee in the Senate. After a childhood spent in St. Louis Park, believe me, it has not been easy to say so many nice things about Edina. But in all seriousness, you have a lot to be proud of as you celebrate this milestone. Congratulations and happy birthday.
To commemorate Founders Day, Senator Franken is giving a flag from the Capitol in Washington, D.C. to the city of Edina. Here to present that flag is Catherine Blauvelt, and we also have Greg Borer from Senator Amy Klobuchar's office to present greetings from the senator to our mayor and to our city manager, Scott Neal.
And Mayor, congratulations. Flown over the Capitol.
Oh,
congratulations.
Thank you.
Of course.
Yeah,
Congratulations.
yeah, thank you.
Thank you.
Coming this evening. All right. Thanks. We'll take care of it.
In the state legislature, we are fortunate to be represented by State Senator Melissa Franzen and State Representatives Ron Earhart and Paul Rosenthal. Representative Earhart is here this evening to read a joint legislative proclamation. Senator Franzen is in Europe, and Representative Rosenthal was able to be here just earlier this evening.
Thank you, and good evening. You know, I've always admired human singing voice all the way from groups like this to Pavarotti. And I wanted to become a part of a group of this size when I was in junior high. And the qualifications were to come down before the class and sing to the teacher. It meant minor things like scale or something or other. And after I got through with my part, she said, well, what I would like you to do is stand in the back row and move your mouth, but don't sing. I'm representing, and I have a word from Representative Paul Rosenthal, who is otherwise occupied with family this evening, and Senator Melissa Franzen, who is traveling and unable to be here. And I have a long resolution here, so I will only read the opening and the closing. This is a House resolution honoring the city of Edina on the occasion of its 125th anniversary. Whereas our state is enhanced by the presence of those communities that have stood the test of time and reaching 125 years to a significant milestone in the life of a community. And then there are 6 more whereases. Then I will move to the closing paragraph. Be it resolved by the Committee on Rules and Legislative Administration of the House of Representatives of the State of Minnesota that congratulates Edina on its 125th anniversary and extends best wishes to the citizens of Edina, dated November 22nd, 2013. Signed by the Speaker of the House, Paul Thiessen, the Chair of the Rules and Legislative Administration, Aaron Murphy, Ron Earhart, State Representative, Paul Rosenthal, State Representative, and Melissa Franson, State Senator. Thank you. And
also joining us this evening is our Hennepin County Commissioner, Jan Callison, who I think is sitting outside the chambers. Welcome, Jan Callison. Several of our city and school district officials are here this evening. Please join me in welcoming Edina City Manager Scott Neal, Edina Mayor Jim Hovland, and City Council members Ann Swenson and Josh Sprague, and retired Mayor Dennis Metzold. From the Edina Public Schools, please join me in welcoming Superintendent Rick Dressen, School Board Member Regina Neville, and Lonnie Skrentner, and School Board Members-elect David Goldstein and Lisa O'Brien. Now we will hear from Marcy Matson, Executive Director of the Edina Historical Society.
Good evening. The Edina Historical Society is filled with great stories. This is hardly surprising, since history quite literally means his story. Tonight, in celebration of Edina's 125 years of history, we will share some of these stories. The people of Edina will tell the story of Edina through memoirs, interviews, newspaper accounts, and diaries to provide a verbal highlight reel of our community's growth from a mill town to a mall suburb. We've organized the readings into 4 sections or historical periods. As we move from reading to reading, we ask that you hold your applause until the end of each section. So sit back, relax, and enjoy our 125 years of history in 45 minutes or less as we tell his story. You guys recognize him? Her story and their story.
Good evening, fellow Edinans and relatives, descendants. It's wonderful to have you here. Think for a moment back 150 years ago when the Civil War broke out. Just think for a minute, they would have had to walk to Southdale. Well, wait a minute, Southdale wasn't even there yet. But just think for a minute, living here in cabins, log cabins, mud huts, 150, 160 years ago. The Civil War, they were all volunteers. They didn't get a letter from the president like I did. I don't know what happened to it, but I was drafted. These were all volunteers. Minnesota had been a state for less than 3 years, and Edina was still 27 years away from becoming a separate village when the Civil War began. As the settlers from what was then Western Richfield Township, who traveled to Fort Snelling during the next 3 years to enlist in the Union Army. James Bryant was just 18 when he left the family farm near Mud Lake. Barely a month after the first shots were fired at Fort Sumter, 2 months later he was fighting at Bull Run. James was later wounded at Gettysburg. James Hawk was 23 when he left his wife and 5 children on the farm south of Mirror Lakes to enlist. 3 months later, he was wounded in fighting near Petersburg. When the hostilities stopped, James Bryant, James Hawks, and their fellow combatants returned to the Western Richfield Township. They were joined there by Michael Maloney, Preston Cooper, Beverly Yancey, and other Civil War veterans who lived elsewhere in the antebellum republic and came north and west to settle after the war. Abolitionist Preston Cooper was 23 and living with his parents in Minneapolis when, despite his Quaker roots, he volunteered for duty. Preston was severely wounded at the Second Battle of Bull Run. After the war, he purchased farmland just north of what is now Interlochen Boulevard in the Hilldale area. James Hawkes died in 1980. James Bryant died in 1886. Neither would be here to participate in Edina's birthing. But other Civil War veterans, some like Michael Maloney, Preston Cooper, Beverly Yancey, played important roles. In all, nearly a third of the voters who participated in the founding of Edina on this historic site 125 years ago were either veterans, sons of veterans, or siblings of veterans. Thank you.
Life in Early Edina, Mill and Grange. Jonathan T. Grimes' memoirs. In the late 1850s, I became interested in a flour mill located on Minnehaha Creek, then called the Waterville Mill, and later known as the Edina Mill. We moved to the farm in 1859 and built at once a new and better dam for the mill and made other improvements. During the Civil War, the government made requisitions for the mill to furnish flour to Fort Snelling. The mill ran night and day, making flours for the Union Army. It was not uncommon to see 25 yoke of oxen at the mill at one time.
Ella Grimes Eustace memoir. As my father owned land in Edina, we were entitled to attend District Number 17 school. My schoolmates were from families who lived south of us, the three Craik girls whose grandfather then owned the Edina Mill, the Codes, the Davises, Bulls, Lucases, Yanceys, Settles, and many others. The Settle, Lucas, and Yancey families were mulattoes. I do not know what percentage, white or black, they were. We never gave it a thought. We knew the Lucas family the best, as Mr. Lucas worked for my father at the time, and the family lived in our old house nearby. Mother never forgot their kindness when our whole family was desperately sick. Mr. Lucas came over and asked us to take our washing home. Mother refused, not wanting to expose them to a contagious illness, but they would not accept her no. The history of Edina mentions the Yancey family, who held many township and village positions.
Minnehaha Grange by Elvira Vinson. Social betterment through education was one of the motivating desires of early settlers. They had an organization called the Lyceum Society, featuring literary programs given by the members. In 1873, a deputy from the National Grange came out and proposed this society organize a subordinate grange. Farmers for miles around became members. Eventually, homes were too small for meetings, and so it was decided to build a hall.
March 7, 1879, a meeting of a considerable number of persons was held at the home of B.C. Yancey, desirous to form an association to build and own a hall building near Edina Mills. Voted that the officers be especially requested to solicit subscriptions to the stock. B.C. Yancey, Diary, 1880. January 5, weather warm. Shingle all day on the Grange Hall. February 23, weather pleasant. Worked hard on the hall all day. At night had a big turnout and a good entertainment. There were about 200 people there, took in $60. May 2, weather pleasant. Went to hall to hear a temperance speech. The speaker did not come, and I had to speak. August 19, weather pleasant. Threshed at Bulls and Wilson's. August 28, weather fine. Went to town with 2 loads of wheat. Baird hauled one for me. I hauled a load back for him. A visitor from Wilberforce, Ohio. I enjoyed my visit to Oakville at Edina Mills, home of the noted fruit grower B.C. Yancey. Here also we found the Lucas family, and among them, Lil Jesse, who played with me some 20 years ago. To me, it was a beautiful sight. Almost daily, 75 or 100 men, women, and children picking berries, while Master Charlie Yancey bossed the patch, keeping harmony throughout. The yield of berries per week averages 2,400 quarts. Many are consumed by the family and the pickers. Mr. Yancey intends making his farm equal to any fruit farm anywhere in the country.
Sarah Baird Diary, April 23rd, 1888. We get up early. I get clothes ready to wash, expecting a big day's work, but alas, human expectations. Dolly comes over after breakfast and tells us Brother Settle is gone, and they want the funeral conducted by the Grange. We must look after the music, draping the hall, etc. So we run all day, tired out, and then meet at Bull's to practice in the evening.
How Edina got its name from a 1940 newspaper article in the Edina Historical Society Irish family file. The Scots wanted Edina, a contraction of the name Edinburgh, used by Robert Burns, a Scotch poet, and a name for the mill for several years. Irish participants held out for Killarney Lakes. According to a legend, several compromise names were proposed. They're suggested, including Westfield, Watermillville, Mill, and Hennepin Park. There were some arguments, all right, but the Scotch didn't pull anything over on us. Why, I voted for Edina myself, said James T. Delaney. At age 79, he and his good friend George Code, part Irish and part Scot, had lived in Edina longer than anybody else. Grange meeting minutes, October 12th, 1888. A meeting was held at the Minnehaha Grange Hall by the residents of the west end of town of Richfield. to consider the possibility of incorporating into a village. A motion was then made and seconded that the village be called Hennepin Parks. The motion was carried. A further motion was then made and seconded that the village be called Westfield. This motion, too, also was carried. It was, figure that out. Then it was moved and carried to adjourned.
Sarah Baird's diary, October 12, 1888. Our meeting seemed just like old times. It really was very enthusiastic. Sarah Baird's diary, Sunday, October 14, 1888. Mr. Brown comes along and insists that the name of the village be changed back to Edina instead of Westfield. I don't like the latter too well, but I don't want it Edina. We're not done with the story. Would you like to come back and tell the rest? The Grange meeting minutes, no. October 27th? I will continue. Don't mind me. Grange meeting minutes, October 27th, 1888. The secretary read a letter from H.F. Brown expressing his most earnest wishes that the new village retain the name of Edina. A long debate ensued with regard to the name by which the corporation shall be known. A motion was then made and seconded to consider the vote taken by the previous meeting upon the name of the proposed village. The motion was carried. A further motion was made and seconded by Mr. Craig to call the proposed village Edina. A motion was then made by Mr. Bull to adjourn, which was seconded by Mr. Kite, but the chairman ruled the motion to adjourn out of order. Mr. Baird then declined to act as a member of the committee. Mr. Wilson, Mr. Ryan, and Mr. Bull also declined to serve any longer as members of said committee if gag law was to prevail. The meeting was somewhat boisterous for a few minutes, but through the efforts of Mr. Yancey, order was restored. A motion was then made and seconded to call a meeting of the evening of October 29th. On further motion, the meeting was then adjourned. Minutes of meeting at Edina Mills, October 29th, 1888. A motion was made and seconded after considerable discussion, both pro and con, to call the proposed new village Edina. A rising vote was taken, which resulted in 47 votes for the name Edina and 42 votes against the name of Edina. Petition for the incorporation of the village of Edina. Exhibit A, that name of the village shall be Edina. The vote to name Edina was controversial and divided, but the vote to form the independent village of Edina was not. On December 12, 1888, 56 of the men of the poll listed voted, and they voted in favor, 54-2. That is that.
We are grateful and delighted to have with us tonight over 70 descendants of over a dozen founders. Some are lifelong Edina residents. Others have traveled here from nearby communities, Greater Minnesota, and Wisconsin. Two descendants of George Millam and Frank Wilson traveled here from California and Seattle to be a part of this celebration. The descendants here this evening represent generations of family and community. One is the last living daughter of Frank Gustav Greenberg. Another is the sixth generation descendant of John Daniel Greenberg. We would like to recognize them all by the founders from whom they descended. I ask descendants, when I read the names of your founding ancestor, please stand as you are able and remain standing until all the founders' names have been read. Audience members, please hold your applause until all the founders' names have been read. James Alva Bull and James Harry Bull. Frank J. Butterfield. Richard Casson and George Fortwingler. Preston and Wallace Cooper. Andrew Craik. J.T. and Michael Delaney. William Dugan. Frank Gustav Greenberg and John Daniel Greenberg. Jonathan Grimes, Silas Harrett, Michael Maloney, George Millam and Frank Wilson, James and J.A. Roberts, James, P.A. and P.W. Ryan. Thank you.
Part 2, From Farms to Suburb, Streetcar Commuters, 1905. From Boyhood Days in Early Morningside, interview with E. Dudley Parsons. The streets of Morningside from the top of the hill were just mud streets, and in wet weather the mud was sticky and deep. It used to annoy the women folk who had to wear boots. They wanted their shoes to look nice when they went shopping or just calling on their neighbors. There were mailboxes at the foot of Morningside Road where both men and women would store their boots while they went downtown on the streetcar. For Morningside Notes in Lake Harriet News, 1920, E. Dudley Parsons, correspondent. March 26th. The people of Morningside are philosophers. One can see them hanging on the straps and to each other all the way from town to Drew Avenue almost any evening, but one seldom hears any cursing. Instead, there is a genial interchange of plans for the spring, where to buy the most paint for the least money, when to spade the sweet pea trench, how to prune an apple tree, and what to do for a hen that won't set in the season. One evening, a Como Harriet car carrying these cheerful folks to their suppers was deliberately turned in at the Harriet Loop. They meekly went on talking the joys to be as they meekly filed out the car to wait for another. July 9th, the United States Census gives Edina an increase from 1,100 to 1,800 people. This proves conclusively the especial flavor that Morningside wins, for the increase was chiefly along the car line from France Avenue to Brookside. It bears out the Northwestern Telephone Company's contention that the Morningside district has the best prospect for growth of all the neighborhoods dependent on Minneapolis. July 30th. Morningsiders return to Morningside when they can do so. The spaces, trees, birds, the quiet, and the neighborliness make a lure that the flat, the boulevard, the movie, and the confusion of the city contend with in vain.
E. Dudley Parsons on the succession of Morningside from Edina in the Harriet News. August 27th, 1920. A word about the village government. We are unequally yoked together with farmers whose interests are not our interests. We want grading, sidewalks, lights, protective ordinances. They want rural conditions. The only solution is for each section to have its own way without feudal contest. September 24th. The county commissioners have granted the petition of property owners that they be permitted to vote as to whether Morningside shall be a separate village. The election will be held on October 16th. This action follows an enthusiastic meeting held at the Odd Fellows Hall last Saturday evening. In that meeting, speeches, both for and against the incorporation, were made. It was urged against the plan that the expense of conducting the affairs of a separate village would be much greater than the proponents of the scheme promise. On the other hand, various speakers declared that if money now raised by taxation in the Morningside district were able to be spent in the Morningside district, a distinct savings could be made. October 1st, 1920. It is a merry contest, this separation business, to be carried on with a good heart and sweet spirit, not in acrimony and with personalities. October 22nd. The new village of Morningside is a certainty. There will be a mass meeting next Tuesday evening for the purpose of nominating candidates for the village offices. October 29th, 1920. Morningside is on the side of youth and progress. Let the new council be students of civic affairs. Hail to them and to the treasurer, justices, and constables of the new Morningside.
Sing to thee with loyal heart, Morningside, my Morningside. In all my thoughts thou hast a part. Morningside, my Morningside. Thy happy homes to me are dear, thy people full of hope and cheer, with prospect bright and naught to fear. Morningside, my Morningside. In winter's cold or summer's heat, Morningside, my Morningside. Thy air is wholesome, pure and sweet. Morningside, my Morningside. Thy border rimmed in forest green, tinged with the sunlight's golden sheen, where carol joyous birds unseen. Morningside, my Morningside.
From the Edina Historical Society newsletter, 2005. The succession vote was relatively quiet compared to the school wars that continued for more than 7 years. While the growing Edina Morningside School District approved the budget for a new school, the residents couldn't decide where to build it. With nearly 1/3 of the school district's population, Morningsiders felt that they deserved their own school. Morningside children walked more than 2 miles to the overcrowded schoolhouse near the site of today's City Hall.
Edina residents liked the existing site for a new school and contended that it would do the Morningside children good to walk a few blocks to school. 11 different school referenda failed between 1920 and 1924. Incredibly, in May 1922, a school safe containing ballots was blown open. The newspaper reported, "No one in Morningside accuses anyone in Edina, and no one in Edina accuses anyone in Morningside, but there is a general suspicion that something is wrong somewhere."
The next day, the newspaper reported that the residents would work for a compromise. Tomorrow night, every Morningsider and every Edinaite who is able to do so will attend the peace conference. Monitors will be appointed to keep reference to the many battles out of the speeches, and there will be every effort at jocular fellowship.
The 11th vote was cast in September 1925, opting for a site at 50th and Wooddale on land donated by Samuel Thorpe to attract families to his proposed country club neighborhood. And again, the proposal failed. Finally, on November 2nd, 1925, the 12th proposal passed by a mere 3 votes. It was a very welcome compromise. There would be 2 schools, one in Morningside at 42nd and Grimes, and a larger school on the Wooddale site. 1924 Country Club District advertisement. Country Club District has won the instant approval of discerning families who have long dreamed of such an opportunity. A home in the country with a golf course, woods and waters nearby, yet near enough and accessible enough to the city to afford residents every convenience and comfort. It offers you an opportunity of having a fine home surrounded by other substantial homes in a fully improved district with all improvements paid for and low taxation thus secured. The Country Club Crier, July 1935. Earliest pioneers came with faith in future of the district. When Erling Mosjew moved into the first home north of Sunnyside Road, he had to drive over fields and through long grass to get to his home during the first few months. Despite that temporary inconvenience, Mr. Mosjew said he felt from the first it would be the nicest residential district anywhere around Minneapolis. Now he is satisfied that his early opinion was correct and he wouldn't live anywhere else. The Crier, July 1935, Country Club, 11 years old, one of nation's 4 fine subdivisions. That the Country Club is something more than just another subdivision is illustrated by the words of its founder, S.S. Thorpe, a man with a record of 51 years in the business, who said he wanted it to be his valedictory, and now that it was well developed and 11 years old, he is satisfied that if I did it all over again, I don't know that I could do anything different. 2 years of preparation preceded the sale of the first lot, and when all was in readiness for the building of the first home, few reminders remained of the cattle breeding operation that was on the site of what is now the Country Club. When the farm was obtained from the Brown heirs, careful planning and painstaking work got underway. Take the matter of the streets, for example. For appearance sake, they must not be too straight. At the same time, for practicability and safety, they must not be too curved. The making of the good subdivision requires many things, one of them a golf course, Mr. Thorpe said. Residents of the district, from their close proximity to Minneapolis, have all the advantages of the city without the crowding, the heat, and noises of congested city areas. There is satisfaction for him in viewing the evidence that his ambition to do a first-class job has been fulfilled.
Association discusses movie project at January 12th meeting, The Crier, February 1932. Howard S. Dale, operator of the Garrick Theater in St. Paul, was the main speaker to the Country Club Association. His group wishes to build a motion picture theater near France Avenue and 50th Street. Their purpose is to erect a first-class house at which no resident of the Country Club could take exception. His group would be glad to cooperate with organizations with a view to having a committee for censorship. They would do their utmost to present only the best films, with films for children on Saturdays. John N. Greer, principal of West High School, spoke against the project, stating it would be dangerous to the community. Children who go to movies 2 or 3 times a week have scattered minds and do not concentrate on their schoolwork. Howard Mayhew and Louis Stein favored the idea, stating that young people of the district could be trusted to pick out wholesome amusement. Permit for theater denied by council, same issue. A delegation representing the Parent Teachers Association, Edina Morningside School, the Boy Scouts, and others attended and indicated a strong sentiment against a motion picture theater. After discussion lasting an hour, the council voted to withhold the permit. District may have new movie house, September 1933. A tentative building permit was granted to Howard S. Dale, who was refused a permit a year ago. This is the architect's drawing of the new Edina Theater to be completed at a cost of $80,000. The showplace will seat 1,000 on the main floor and 300 in the balcony. The theater will be built by the Norris Creamery Company and replaces the Norris Dairy Plant. Village Recorder Ben B. Moore was assured Edina labor would be given preference on the construction of the theater. New Edina Theater opens to Capacity House, September 1934. The Edina staged its formal opening last evening. Construction totaled $100,000. Of special interest to residents is the mural in the foyer depicting the Edina Mill.
Hundreds of Edina and Morningside residents answered the call to serve during World War II. Some, like Frank Ellis Jr., were already in uniform when the war began. In Morningside, the residents erected a billboard at the corner of 44th and France to honor those from the community who were serving. There was a blue star for each man or woman in Morningside who was in uniform, and a gold star for those who had died. The first star on the board was a gold one. It was honoring Frank Ellis Jr., who perished aboard the USS Arizona when the ship was sunk at Pearl Harbor, December 7th, 1941. Edina didn't have a separate memorial, but like in Morningside, one of every 3 or 4 houses in the village had a blue star in the window. Some had gold stars. In all, 25 gold stars were hung in Edina and Morningside windows during World War II. Each gold star had its own unique story of a life that ended early in service to country. No story was more poignant than the one behind a gold star displayed in a home on Edina Boulevard for Dwight Bud Williams. Not only was Bud's family wealthy, he was also blessed with good looks, an affable way, and especially high intelligence. After graduating cum laude from Blake, Bud entered Harvard. He didn't have to do it, but he left Harvard in its safe environment after only a year to volunteer for wartime service. Bud was only 20 years old when he was killed in action in northern Italy. The date was April 30th, 1945. Hitler committed suicide in his bunker in Berlin that same day. The German commander in Italy surrendered the next day. The war in Europe was essentially over, but it came too late for Bud Williams from Edina, who had so much ahead of him when he died early. Like the Grange Hall and the old mill on the creek, Frank Ellis, Bud Williams, and the other hometown heroes who went to war and didn't return remain integral parts of Edina's proud heritage. Thousands of World War II and other veterans proudly walk among us today. More than 5,000 adults, that's 1 in 7 adults in Edina, currently living here, have worn the uniform during times of war and peace around the world in the last 70 or 80 years. Counting parents, siblings, spouses, and children, 8 of 10 households in Edina today include a veteran, a person's only one step removed from a veteran, or somebody currently serving, and there are a lot of those. With our rich patriotic heritage, it's so important that Edina not forget its native and adopted sons and daughters who proudly served over the last 125 years, nor the ultimate sacrifice of the 32 hometown heroes who went to war and didn't come home. Neither should the sacrifices be forgotten of those who waited in Edina and Morningside for loved ones to return. That's why it's so fitting that Edina's citizens and government are working together to establish a Veterans Memorial that will honor the 32 fallen sons of Edina and all who have served in uniform over the past 125 years. The Veterans Memorial will stand at Utley Park. That's at the intersection of Wooddale and 50th. It will be an appropriate and very wonderful addition to our community. Are there any veterans here tonight? Will anyone who's a veteran please stand? Please. And anyone who's also a parent of a veteran, please also stand. Thank you very, very much.
Part 3, Edina Becomes. From the Edina Buzzette, June 2nd, 1950. Superintendent Milton Coleman, looking back over the year. The date, September 6, 1949, will always be a memorable one in Edina Morningside. Everyone was enthusiastic about the new venture because of the beauty of the building and because of the thrill of being a part to setting up a brand new school. Athletics have played an important part of building school spirit. Our teams made an excellent record this first year. We met teams from schools old and experienced, and never did we need to be ashamed of the results. Support from pupils and parents were outstanding. With such a start, great things are possible. October 11th, 1949, students choose Hornets for a school nickname. Hornets was chosen as a school nickname as fairly as possible. It's up to the students now to live up to it and defend the school name. It has possibilities of working into good cheers and a school flag. The names suggested boiled down to two, Hornets and Eagles. Hornets won by 284 votes, and the Eagles came in a close second at 273 votes.
October 11th, 1949. Edina chorus and band are off to a good start. Singing is not for weaklings. We want good, strong, clear voices with zest and power. Without balance of the sections, we are like a football team without a halfback. Lyle Gilbert, director of the high school chorus, believes that our school can and will eventually have one of the best choruses in the state. October 11th, 1949. Phoebe Perry, editor-in-chief. Something to shout about. We have something to shout about. Let's shout it everywhere, at our football and basketball games, track, hockey, and swimming meets, everywhere that our school is to be represented. Let our student council, our clubs, our school building, and most of all, our behavior tell everyone who comes in contact with us, without the words ever being spoken, that we are of the best. That's school's spirit, when the air vibrates with this respect that everyone has for each other, with faith and enthusiasm for our school and all its organizations and endeavors, we can't lose.
Cost of a postage stamp is 3 cents. A gallon of gas, 23 cents. I Love Lucy is the top-rated television show, and a bright-eyed 32-year-old from Centerville, South Dakota landed right here in Edina. The year, 1956. Young Marty Rudd was hired as Southdale Center's first general manager and publicity and promotion director. Marty is here this evening with his wife as well. Marty, you want to give a wave to everyone? Thanks for joining us this evening. As you all know, Southdale Center created a buzz all around the United States. It was the first enclosed, heat-controlled mall. With Dayton's and Donaldson's as the anchor tenants, it was the first time in retail history that 2 major department stores had partnered to be in the same shopping center. Southdale opened in October 1956 with 75 stores plus those 2 department stores. The 2-level shopping center had parking access at both levels. Initially, all of the women's apparel and women's fashions were on the upper floor. The lower level housed menswear, services, hard goods, and of course the restaurants. There were many firsts for the Southdale Center. From the beginning, it was one highlight after another. The exciting grand opening caught the nation's attention. Media from all over the country converged on Edina. Media moguls like Life magazine, Time magazine, the New York Times. Southdale Center even made the cover of Life magazine. There was a 35-foot Christmas tree that they put up that first year without the help of any equipment. Marty still marvels that no one killed themselves that day. Visitors from all over the Midwest visited Southdale Center as they hosted church and school choirs and fashion shows. Bob Barker's Truth or Consequences show, Don McDonald and the Breakfast Club, commercial and amateur art shows, and can you believe 3 ring circuses? Organ fairs, British and European trade shows, a Hawaiian show with musicians and dancers, an animal farm at Easter time. The Southdale team built special cages for that event every year, and as you can imagine, the kids just absolutely loved it. Sports Illustrated brought in the top stars from every sport. Southdale built a tennis court. They had a diving tank and golf greens. George Milken, Jim Pollard, and Patty McCormick, the Olympic diving champion, attended. Bob Mathias, the Olympic decathlon champion, and Billy Talbert in tennis, and Tobin Rote in football. What a week here in Edina. And let's not forget the zoo, the tigers, the lions, oh my. What other animals can we think of? And they even had a full-time zookeeper at Southdale. The burning question in Edina and Minnesota, have you visited Southdale Center yet?
Human rights in Edina. I'm sorry, Mr. Jefferson, I can't sell you a lot here in Country Club District. Why? Because it's against the rules, that's why. Maybe you should find a home closer to your own people.
In the sudden prosperity of the early 1920s, who could resist the appeal of Thorpe Brothers' new Country Club District? Amenities, all protected by restrictive covenants. Best known was the infamous paragraph, quote, "No lot shall ever be sold to any person other than of the white or Caucasian race."
It's no excuse, but Country Club was not alone in this practice. As late as 1946, the new covenants of Edina Highlands contained practically the same restrictive language. These discriminatory rules were declared unconstitutional by the U.S. Supreme Court in 1948.
But there was another unwritten restriction that applied to Country Club. It was practiced something like this. Really, Mr. Levine, you'd like to look in the Country Club? I honestly don't think you or your family would be happy there. This type of discrimination flourished successfully, keeping certain groups, mainly Jewish families, out of Country Club and many other areas until the 1960s. What brought about the change in Edina was leadership.
One leader was the late Tom Oy, a World War II veteran of Japanese ancestry. Under his leadership, the Edina Human Rights and Relations Commission was formed in the early 1970s. The Commission's annual award for excellence in human rights bears his name.
Recent recipients of the award include Joyce Repia, Edina's assistant city planner, who for a number of years told the story of the restrictive covenants to Edina middle school students. Ellen Kennedy, an Edina resident and director of World Without Genocide. Rachel Preem Grenier, Edina High School counselor and advisor to the student group Gay Street Alliance. And Alec Fisher, a 2011 Edina High School graduate and creator of the award-winning anti-bullying documentary film, Minnesota Nice.
Edina is not totally free from unfortunate hateful activities. Graffiti using hateful words and symbols have been reported as recently as August of this year. But progress is always being made to educate and improve awareness and deal honestly with our past.
So is Edina just a place to live and work, or is it something else? Are we paying attention to the issues that we have just highlighted? If the answer is yes, then Edina may be becoming a place where all can not only reside, but where all can truly participate.
Skip, how do you create a tradition of athletic excellence?
Well, you start with wonderful people who enjoy sports and recreation and who want to provide opportunities for themselves, family, friends, and the rest of the community. Edina created a Parks and Recs department in 1955 when it was still a village. As it grew, it dedicated more parks and built more facilities.
And the school district built gyms, pools, fields, and hired great coaches. Edina High School won its first state championship in 1952, just 3 years after it was opened. Since then, Edina High School teams have won 151 championships in 20 different sports, both girls and boys. The girls' tennis team just won its 17th consecutive state championship.
And earlier this year, the boys hockey team won a record 11th state championship. There are excellent opportunities for athletes outside of the school, too. In 1983, the American Legion baseball team won the national championship, and the Braemar City Figure of Lake Skating Club won the 2013 Junior National Championship, an impressive fourth in 5 years. Back in school, Kara, it looks like Edina students take academics pretty seriously.
We sure do. Most of us participate in other activities as well, at school and in the community. Someone even invented the nickname choir jocks for athletes who sing. We're in the orchestra, we play in the band, some of us serve as student members to city boards and commissions. We're glad to be a part of a community with so many traditions of excellence.
Edina and its growth, 1955 to 1966, Village Manager Warren Hyde. Edina is but one of many municipalities in the United States which have had growing pains for nearly 20 years, starting in about 1945. While no claim is made that Edina has solved all the problems, today it is the most desirable community in which to live. How Edina developed during the past 10 years deserves telling, if only to provide its residents, more than half of whom have lived here less than 10 years, with a basic understanding of their own home community.
Edina's successful transformation from a sparsely settled rural community in 1930 to one of America's finest suburbs is due to many factors, chief among them which was the farsightedness of the first wave of suburbanites and the insistence on the part of those who came later that the original goal of providing a desirable environment for modern living be properly implemented.
The main change from rural to suburban living began in the 1920s with the development of the Country Club District. But the big move, still moving, began in the late 40s, guided by residents qualified to insist on sensible planned growth. Consider a sampling. Edina was the first suburb in Hennepin County to
appoint a planning commission, 1929. Enact a zoning ordinance, 1931. Construct a modern village hall, 1954. Move for lower suburban natural gas rates, 1955.
Secure resident approval for a comprehensive parks acquisition and development, 1957. Provide a full-time planning director, 1957. Require subdividers to finance sewer and water installations, 1957, and to provide a municipal swimming pool, 1958.
secure Class A rating on municipal bonds, 1962. Publish a proposed budget summary, 1963. Provide municipal golf course and summer recreation complex, 1964. And build a year-round ice arena, 1965.
All municipal improvements are not firsts, but this sampling lists a few of the actions, a few of the ways of thinking about village government that have pushed Edina from a cluster of houses around the mill site to what it is today. More important, to a well-planned notion of what it will be tomorrow. Certainly no single improvement affects all residents. However, the overall impact of improvement has had a great deal to do with your safety, your recreation, your home, your enjoyment, your investment in your community, the village of Edina.
Edina today. This is just a quick comparison of the numbers from the 1966 report to the 2013 report in a couple of key areas. Population, we've increased from 35,000 to approximately 49,000 in 2013. Single-family units are approximately 9,000 single-family homes. In Edina in 1966, just over 12,000 today. The biggest change in our housing composition has been in the area of multiple dwelling units. You can see they were about 5% of our total in 1966, and they're about 45% of our total today, with over 45%, over 10,000 units, multiple dwelling units in the city. The city in 1966 had a taxable valuation of about $39 million, and today it's $8.8 billion. It's the fourth largest tax base in the state of Minnesota, behind only Minneapolis, St. Paul, and Bloomington. Just a little bit more about our city organization. We are a council manager form of government. We have about 280 employees. Our annual operating budget is in the $90 million range. We have 8 advisory boards and commissions that allow additional citizen input into the way local government works. Our city government also has a housing and redevelopment authority, and our city council fills that role as well. And finally, we're a part of a number of joint powers organizations, and we provide 911 dispatching services for the cities of Golden Valley and Richfield. We own a public safety training center with the cities of Bloomington, Eden Prairie, and the airport. And we also have a cable television commission with 5 other cities in our region. Some of our key partners, Fairview Southdale Hospital, of course, is a key partner to the city. It's important to have a hospital of that quality in our city. Also, Edina Schools and the Edina Chamber of Commerce are key partners for our city government. Key places, of course, 50th in France, the Grandview District, which is under some dreaming right now about what it might be in the future, and also the Southdale area. You saw a photo that looked much like this one just a little bit ago. This was the original Southdale aerial picture from the 50s. Southdale, if you haven't been to the mall lately, has gone over extensive renovations, probably more than the entire value of the city in 1966. One of Victor Gruen's original visions for the Southdale area was a community, and not just retail shopping, but one of those visions is being realized with the addition of an apartment complex at the corner of 69th and York, and that's what that will look like when it's completed later in 2014. This is just a quick architectural rendering of what the Byerly's project on France Avenue will look like when it's completed, probably later in 2015 or 16. The grocery store is under construction now, and if you drove out there today, you'd recognize where it's going to be. This is called Aurora on France, and this is a building that's going to be a multiple residential and commercial building. It'll be at the corner of France and 65th. One of the interesting parts of the Hyde report was the mention of Pentagon Park as being one of the very first modern industrial parks in the Twin Cities, and it's featured in the Hyde report from 1966. In 2013, we're talking about the future of Pentagon Park and how it's going to be very significantly different, actually, in the future, and it might look much like the lower sketch. The city has made in the last year and a half, actually, some very significant improvements to Braemar Arena. We've added a locker room project called the Hornet's Nest to the Braemar Ice Arena, and we've also added a new surfing improvement to our aquatic center. It's not open today. We have a very strong reputation among our residents. This is from our 2013 Quality of Life survey that we do every 2 years. And our quality of life in terms of folks who say this is an excellent or a good place to live is in the 99% range. We ask residents if they feel they could have a role in city government other than voting if they want to, and they told us by quite a large majority that they could. And they also told us 92% of our residents that were part of this survey told us they think the direction the community is moving in is the right direction. We're pretty proud of what we do here. We have a lot of impacts on life city government does in the city of Edina. We have meaningful work for all ages and all people.
So why do we study history? Why are we here tonight? My high school history teacher required us to memorize this quote from George Santayana: "Those who cannot remember the past are condemned to repeat it." In Edina, history has taught us many lessons and changed our practices and attitudes, but history also allows us to relive the good parts of our past. I know many people who would like to have one more 79-cent breakfast at Clancy's, or recall their glory days as a hornet or a cougar. And through our photos and yearbooks, oops, there it is, at the Edina History Museum, they can do just that. But even if you're new to Edina, local history affects you. We often answer those history mysteries. People call me up and say, why are the roads named Delaney, or Grimes, or Lois Lane? Or what is that concrete thing in the middle of Minnehaha Creek? Or why am I finding railroad spikes in my backyard? I get a lot of calls in the spring about that. More importantly, history tells us who we are as a community. We are a community that has battled, with enthusiasm at times, but after a boisterous meeting over our name, we came together almost unanimously on the vote to incorporate. After our many elections to build a school, we now have one of the best school districts in the nation. And I think it's no accident that many of our stories throughout our 125 years emphasize our desire to be best and first. Those are all good academic reasons to study local history, but I hope you discovered tonight that history is just plain good fun. We invite you to come to the Edina History Museum or read our blog to discover more great stories from Edina's past. The Edina Historical Society tells his story, Greenberg's, her story, remember her, their story, and your story. We hope you find your story here tonight. The story of your house, your neighborhood, your childhood, your classmates. It's all here at the Edina Historical Society.
Okay, here we come. We're going to take you back to 1988, which was the Edina Centennial. We had a whole year celebration where we celebrated our history and the people here in Edina. And Betty's going to show us through some of the slides that we have. They aren't slides. But anyway, photos.
Remembering when.
Remembering.
Yes, remember the road signs. Remember the street banners. 50th and France. An ice castle, my goodness, look at it.
And look at
We
Bob
really
Coteen.
had one.
Look at Bob Coteen in the back.
Snow sculptures, square dancing, quilting. I believe that was chess, wasn't it, Kate?
Yes, chess, yes.
Talent shows, birthday parties, the International Youth Festival.
That's the one we had the cast of thousands.
Oh,
wasn't it?
yes, all the children at the high school area there. Athletics, of course, races, balloon release, historical play at the Historical Grange Hall. Some of you maybe were there today. 50th and France parade, historical bridal fashion show. Lots of people.
Betty's mother's dress was in there.
Centennial Run, some of you were in that. Neighborhood block parties, Senior Youth Day, balloon releases. Oh, of course, the 4th of July parade with the Mayor Courtney in Virginia. The reunion band, more floats. Golf tournament, so many things, a fall fashion show. Art in the Park, we're still having Art in the Park today, aren't we? Enjoying that. E-Dynamite, something we haven't had for a while, but maybe we'll bring it back again someday.
Celebrated with the cake that had jewels in it.
I know, and one was a 1-carat diamond, remember? The lucky winner.
Pretty exciting.
But here we have December 12th, 1988. 3 of our mayors who are no longer with us, Jim Van Valkenburg, Wayne Courtney, and Arthur Bredesen.
Oh, there we go. Well, there we go. We're going to have to, you know, but we're celebrating. We're still celebrating, and we're celebrating the fact that we made over $200,000, which enabled us to have the History Center. So we are still celebrating, and we've got the wind socks to prove it. So thank you very much, and now we'll introduce Ruth Valgame, who she is the proud owner of the chairman of the 2013. 2013. Quasqueak.
So here we are, 2013, 125 years. Thank you all for coming tonight. Let's have a big round of applause for our readers and for the Edina Chorale. This is your party, Edina, and when the Edina Historical Society decided to spotlight the city's 125th anniversary, we wanted to involve the greater community in planning the celebration, and we're happy to say that you, the community, responded in a big way. So let's take a quick look back at the year. Braemar City of Lakes Figure Skating Club 48th Annual Ice Show. Edina Art Center's Edinascapes exhibit showcasing Edina landscapes, cityscapes, landmarks, parks. Tom Pepper's Quasquicentennial crossword puzzle. Vintage style art on postcards and t-shirts. You can get yours tonight. Reunions by neighborhood, the Morningside Old Timers, the Cahill Irish, and the alumni of the Wooddale School. The history-themed 4th of July parade, a phenomenal historic house tour with 3 homes opened by generous owners, 50 enthusiastic docents from the Edina League of Women Voters, the Edina Garden Council, and the Morningside Women's Club, and a tireless tour chair, she knows who she is. Friends of the Edina Library's 50th anniversary look back at Edina's suburban history through the experience of the Desperate Book Club. Edina Reads Quasquicentennial Writing Contest, and of course, Founders Day, sponsored by the City of Edina. Thanks to everyone who participated in this Quasquicentennial year. Quasquicentennial Committee, Founders Day Committee, and Historical Society board members, please stand so we can acknowledge you. Before we go, please mark your calendars for 2038. Edina's sesquicentennial year is coming. We invite you to celebrate a bit longer in the lobby with cake. We got a photo booth, displays, more conversation about your history. Happy birthday, Edina, and good night.
Un momento. Okay, sorry, I'm sorry. This is a surprise on Ruth, I'm sorry. But we all know that these kind of events don't happen unless persons or people, decide to take it on and make it happen. And we have 2 of those with us tonight that really did a lot of coordination for all year long, but particularly for this event. So I want Marcy and Joni to come out, please.
Let us eat cake.